also will help us build our reading list. It gives us some sense of what other materials are out there that might be helpful. The last thing in terms of preparation, I'm going to really say this, and I know that those of you who've taught a class get this. It takes a lot of time and energy to prepare for this. And you know, so for every hour of class, we're probably spending time to get the most out of this and also share with other people. Take some time. Get into the habit of taking some time to actually read the materials, read supplemental things that your curiosity has been piqued by, and then nope. But that's a good guess. Take about 3 or 4 post-it notes and then pass the rest around. Guess. You can guess. You know, there's no penalty for guessing. None whatsoever. We won't even laugh at you.
You're the first dynasty, the establishment of the first dynasty.
No? Close. Y'all are hitting all around it.
I think it has something to do with Kenyon and something starting of something.
This is an African history class, so that's a very good guess. Yes, it has something to do with Kemet.
Yeah.
Calendar.
Ding.
The calendar.
Okay. That's a date
Kemetic calendar
associated with the development of the first calendar on the African continent. Solar calendar predates the first dynastic period, because that's usually associated with about 3,000 before the Christian era, BCE, as they say, or before the Common Era. Another way of saying that. So 4240. So what year would this be? So 6249. While they're doing that, so you need 63 feet of that string. Okay, while they do that, I want you to take each of the 3 post-it notes that you have. You're going to put one idea per post-it note. And basically what I want you to write is think of 3 significant historical facts to use. 3 significant historical facts in African history. It can be from any period, from any era. If you have a general sense of when something happened, I want you to write that on it. But one idea per post-it note. So if you say, significant fact for me is Malcolm X's Ballad of the Bullet speech in 1964. Write that. Or if you say African, oh, good question. When we say African history, we're talking about Africa on the continent and the diaspora. The fact can be from African American history, Caribbean history. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to call this end, this is 4240 before the Common Era. Okay. And Brother Cater say, good morning. You see Brother Cater?
Yeah.
Okay. That would represent today. All right. So this is the expanse of African history that we're talking about. The scale of this is this. 1 foot represents how many years? You said 100 years. 100 years.
Okay.
So 1 foot, 12 inches, represents 100 years. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to try to place, and we're going to use a tape measure to the extent we need to demarcate. Try to place your fact on this timeline.
We should,
Well, yours is before mine.
that should be stuck.
I mean, after mine.
You can move it.
Oh.
Okay. Oh, that, oh wait.
No, that's when the price of it started. Okay. So,
You know a whole lot that happened after year 1.
Okay. So we seem to know a lot about what happened after year 1.
In the last 100 years.
In the last 100 years.
that's our experience.
Okay,
I
that's
mean, our living experience.
The greatest ever goes on down there.
Okay.
You know how they go
All right.
on TV? The
All right.
greatest ever's over there.
Okay.
We don't write enough of our own history before that point. We don't get taught our history before that.
You don't take time to learn.
Or read them now.
Just that, in terms of specifics, we know the more of the facts, the dates, the evidence of the most recent. We've all heard about the more historical, but when I had to think about dates and names, I really couldn't pull it together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we don't really think about beyond slavery, which would have begun about 5 feet from the end, 5 to 6 feet from the end.
Okay, so slavery, the transatlantic slave trade is going to be 600. So you're saying it's like right in here?
Yeah,
Harry
5 to
something
6
born
feet.
1830s? So it's
Really, it's a foot for every 100 years, so 5 feet, you know.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Other observations? Other observations about what we're seeing? What strikes me is that basically between year 1 and 1000, or even into the quote medieval period or few period, nobody's mentioning much of anything. We're not talking about Mali, Songhay, Ghana, Timbuktu. There's one, Mansa Musa. Took a pilgrimage to Mecca, took gold with him, had so much gold that it devalued gold for like, I think 20 years. He had distributed so much. And then his older brother, Abubakar II, in 1311, is said to have had a transatlantic voyage, ended up in Mexico. So that's in that same era. Classical knowledge, based on what happens from that end down to the Common Era as a basis for who we are. When we get to that second period, we begin to think about the things that we sort of have as manifestations of African culture tend to come from that era. The clothing that we wear, when we say we're going to have African attire, comes from that era. The music we play, djembe drums, balafons, choras, kalimbas, all come from that era. And that's music that is very ancestral in its origins, right? And then in our African American or Afro-Caribbean or Afro-Brazilian, wherever we may be from, then that begins to manifest in those last 300-400 years. The language we talk, the food we cook, the way we move our bodies, how we relate to the earth, a lot of those things come from that common era. If we grew up, as I did in Mount Rose in the southern United States, we have an orientation to our history in a certain way. That we understand Jim Crow, segregation. We have some sense of it. You being a little older than me have a different understanding, and as a woman have a different understanding I would have as a younger man, not that much younger. But where we grow up has an impact on our historical framework. Brother Davis's historical framework, having grown up in Panama, is probably different. Because you mark time differently. Independence Day in Panama is a different day. You know, and what people do is different, right? So the study is important. Malcolm said, you know, of all of our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. John Henry Clark said, he said, you know, history is the clock at which people tell time, you know. So that's why we started with time. Like, let's think about 4240, and again, as a working number, we know that our history extends beyond that. Because all of the elements, as Dr. Asa Hilliard would say, is that all the basic elements of the society that we know as ancient Kemet were in place before the first dynasty. That much of that knowledge was there and it got consolidated over the dynastic period. There were some innovations, there were some changes, but it was a very conservative society in the sense that they held on to what knowledge they had and built on it. Constantly reconstructing the history, constantly finding new information out. With regard to calendars, other systems, we know that in the last 10, 15, maybe 20 years, a tremendous amount of research in Nubia and that part of the Nile Valley region has turned up a lot more information. More pyramids in Nubia than in